Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. How is everyone?
You know, sometimes the sun comes out from behind a cloud and like the colors in the world just sort of pop. Just one of those days, I think, for unknown reasons. Really hard to put a finger on it. What about you, Pat?
I don't know. What's been going on? What's the story? I watched I sometimes watch what's his name? He's on HBO Real Time with Bill Maher. And they filmed on a Friday. They go live on a Friday night in the US, and I think it was either the day or the day after it was announced that Trump was going to be charges being laid against Trump. And it was kind of their version of it feels like tonight a little bit for us. It was like they just started the thing by going, anything happening in the news today?
You know, in Star Wars: A New Hope, when Obi-Wan sort of goes, "Oh, there's been a disturbance in the Force. It's like 1,000 voices cried out all at once, and there was suddenly silence, and it's very, very bad." This is like that, but good.
Yeah, yeah.
Like Planet Plunket has been blown up by the Twitter Death Star. I'm very happy for it.
We have been very honest the whole time about who we are and where we are. We've always been very clear that, you know, the platform is much bigger than us and has a lot more viewers and stuff. But what we can absolutely say right now is we have exponentially more followers on Twitter than Karen Plunkett. At our couple of hundred. So yeah, obviously we're going to cover off about that. But listen, I can see there's a bunch of you who have jumped in at the start. In fact, I even think I read someone just say, here we go, from Neil, saw the headline on stuff and immediately go to join the queue to hear your response. It's almost like people knew. It's almost like people knew we might be talking about it. And we are going to talk about it. But let me just encourage you as well. We have a really, really, really interesting conversation to play for you tonight by economist Shamubeel Eaqub, who was on, I think, The Nation in the weekend, and also some video from the AM show this morning with Chloe dropping some truth bombs, and actually talking a bit about how we the public should understand government, but also talking a bit about how the media should be providing more space, Chewy, for conversations and maybe not having those little tiny 3-minute chunks. I don't know. It's a really unique idea. Maybe someone should get on to giving people a chance to speak for 20, 30 or 40 minutes without interruption. I don't know. Maybe someone could get onto that. It's between now and the election. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
Either that or I continue shit posting. It's like a suicide pact.
Hey, before we get into the show, I want to say a huge thanks to our patrons. Now, do you see a little thing there? Look, we've had a couple of patrons drop off in the last in the weekend. People heading overseas and taking trips and doing things, and more power to you. Love you for it. Thank you for being on board while you were on board. But look, there's a little space here. See what it says, Chewy? It says your name. Your name could be there. Could be right there. Your name. If you're watching, your name could be there. If you wanted it to be, it could be there. Oh my God, you freaked the shit out of me, Chewy. I saw what screen you were sharing down there, and I said, "What's Karen Plunkett doing in our waiting room?" That's not what that is. And also, let me say thanks and congratulations and welcome to Carl B. Carl B joined us in the fuel level of patronage over the weekend, and so we want to say thank you, Carl, and welcome to the team. And you will get your delivery of being 22% more attractive. And what's it now? 22% taller? Did we say that as well, or is that not accurate?
People getting big. People get real big.
22% richer, I think, because we're basically a church, and if you give to us, it will be given back to you tenfold. I don't know, something like that anyway. But thank you to all our patrons. Love you to bits. If you're interested in being involved in what we do, super simple. Well, you can just watch us. You can be involved in what we do by just watching us and nothing else. But if you'd like to get behind what we're doing and help us to pay a few bills, especially in a current climate where, you know, some other incomes have disappeared. Today FM, sayonara Today FM, take that little bit of income off in there, then you're more than welcome to either come and be a patron, to super chat us, to super thanks us, or just to love us. You know, you can just love us as well, because, you know, the emotional, the amount I get filled up emotionally makes me feel rich, Chewy. That's how I feel, at least. I don't know about you, but that's how I feel.
Absolutely. Before we move on to, we will circle back to do more gloating. I just want to set expectations for the show. We do have some serious stuff to talk about, and then we'll look back to the gloating. So that will continue throughout the evening. Okay. But before, if I may, I just want to play this before we move on and be serious.
That is fantastic. Oh, that is beautiful. Likely to get us kicked off YouTube as well from that music, but worth it. But worth it. So this video will go out with 7 views by the end of the night, because we'll be blocked off YouTube for a violation. But that's all right. Worth it. Completely worth it. Yep. All right. So let's get into this, shall we? This is something, actually, I got to give credit to Calvin Morgan as well, because he messaged me. We got onto this before any of the news media picked up on it. Calvin messaged me and said what had happened, and so I went to Karen's Twitter feed. As you can see, the post, it's got his URL, twitter.com/Sean Plunkett. That's his handle. Account suspended. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's not such a big deal. You know, people can tell mayoral candidates to go jump off a bridge and get suspended, and, you know, it's not such a big deal. It can happen to anyone, can't it, Chewy? Anyone can. It can happen to anyone, can't it, Chewy?
Yep.
Chewy? Anyone.
Yes. Literally anyone.
But what I thought,
the smallest infraction.
What I thought, there's a couple of things going on here, right? Either Elon Musk is woke, because if you disagree with Karen Plunkett, you're woke. So either Elon Musk is woke, or potentially Sean Plunkett's done something pretty significant to come under the new kind of freedom of speech banner that Elon Musk wants to put over Twitter. And it really, to me, feels like it can only be one of those two things: that either Elon's gone woke, which I'm sure is what the narrative will be tomorrow morning on the platform, or some pretty heinous stuff was done by Mr. Plunkett to get, and I believe, permanently suspended. We'll have a look at some of the wording and some of the stories that have come out, but that's the belief. What do you think, Chewy? I mean, or I guess the third option is, or Elon is actually realizing his absolutely ridiculous narrative at the start of him taking over Twitter was never going to work, and he's pulled back on a little bit of that. That's probably the third option. I don't like that. That sounds balanced and measured, though, and I don't want to go there tonight. Not balanced.
I think people are reacting to this as like, why has Elon done this? He's one of us. He's our boy. But I mean, Twitter is still a big company, and people are still getting these complaints. And if there's one thing that's stood out to me, when what really gets people's attention on a report is a lot of people reporting either the same post or the same person. And as I was talking to someone on Facebook about why we're being very mean, us here on the extreme hard left of, did you know, Pat, I'm part of an army with Byron C. Clark, and we're being orchestrated by Mark Dolder from News Hub. We're a troll army, which is great. I love that for me.
Hang on, can I ask this question then? Does that mean that because since Jacinda's gone, we're not getting our pay pack from her anymore? Do we now get it from News Hub? Is that because I haven't seen it since Jacinda's gone?
Specifically from Mark Dolder, which is great.
Right. So a little brown envelope each week, same as with Jacinda?
I assume it's on the way.
Okay.
But yeah, it has always been the weight of complaints, I think, counts for more than what the complaint actually is about. Now, I got the notification because I reported a whole bunch of Sean Plunkett stuff the other week.
Okay,
and I can
so
say
good.
what I reported him for.
Yep.
was
Tell
his
us. Tell
outburst
us.
around the Christchurch shooting. So he was pointing people in the direction and just asking questions about the Christchurch shooting. So here it's come back and gone, you submitted a report for hateful content. The violation has been found. Other people have reported him for harassment, for reporting, for posting private details, for being abusive. He seems to have been flagged for a whole bunch of stuff. And I assume that all of these reports go into a folder and then someone looks at it and goes, holy shit, yes, delete.
So question, I wanted to just, for clarification, because I didn't see any of this. Contrary to popular belief, who thinks all we do is ever talk about Sean Plunkett, we talk about Sean Plunkett a fair bit, but because it's fun, so I'm unaware, I don't keep a really close eye on what's going on, was the him directing people, and this is what the news reports are saying as well, to the Shooters Manifesto, was that like recent? There wasn't like tweets that were picked up from 4 or 5, 6 years ago. That's like recently he was doing that.
Maybe about
is
a
that the
month
story?
ago. I think within the last month.
Okay.
So, I mean, that gives you kind of a lead time of how long it would take to respond. They're not just hitting the ban hammer straight away. There needs to be that wait, and I guess the time of people to review someone's account.
Well, I wonder if as well, if it happened over if it happened over the weekend, I wonder if also that means that there was like they went back to review it. So like I often get copyright strikes on our YouTube channel, right? Often it happens a lot because we play clips from other people, and then I kind of go, well, we're it sounds weird saying this out loud, we're a news agency, so we come under fair use, and pretty much I've never had a copyright strike stick, but it takes time. And so what happens is you get an algorithm that censors on YouTube, and then you challenge it, and then they have a manual, they actually have a person come and look at it and check it. And I wonder if when let's say that happened with Plunkett, that he was flagged for that thing a month ago, and then people come to look at it and check it, and it just happened over the weekend, which means the past 7 to 10 days has been full of Posey Parker. I wonder if that added another layer on top to the decision to make it, even though there may not have been as many complaints about that. You know what I mean?
I can't imagine that Posey's visit did him any favors if someone was coming in and going, well, this account has been reported for abuse in the past. What's he doing today? Oh, holy shit. You know, and like I had someone on Facebook going, oh, you're just trawling back from his tweets from years ago. And I was like, no, you don't have to. You just go to Sean's account, and then you pick 3 things that he said in the last week that breached terms of service, and you hit report. It's not hard. It's not like there's this black hat team of hackers trying to find the one thing that Sean said that was offensive.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah.
And like these people are jumping to his defense saying he's this bastion of free speech. And he's like, no, it's not. No, he's a bully. He's privately funded by a fucking very wealthy family foundation. He's not your guy.
Remember, we always got to say this, who get $300 million of government money a year.
Absolutely.
So we always got to push this. Remember, this has to be said again and again and again, because for some reason, those on the right, Sean Plunkett being one of the loudest voices, maybe not biggest voices, but certainly loudest, constantly go on and on and on about how public money means, you know, that there's strings attached. Public money means you're not able to be open and honest because there's things. Well, he may not get it in his bank account from the government, but it goes from the government to his funder's bank account to him. So there's no question. You actually can't even challenge me on this, that he is not at the very least a beneficiary of Plunkett money. Government money, like a beneficiary of it, because it comes via someone else to him. So yeah, let's just stop all that bullshit around public money. And I know that they're going to say, well, it's a public interest journalism fund, yada, 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 yada. The reality is Sean Plunkett is known because of his career on the public tit, RNZ, Fair Go. That's the only reason he's known. So he's been able to be on the public journalism tit for a huge portion of his career. That gave him profile. That gave him the ability to do other things. That gave him the headline ability to set this up, which his funders have given him a whole bunch of money that they got from the government. So let's just stop all this bullshit around no public money, nothing like that, no public money, because there's no question that no one would know Sean Plunkett's name if it wasn't for his career on public money, and he wouldn't have a business right now if his funders didn't get a huge amount of public money. Conversation's over. Let's just stop that bullshit.
Yeah, I have found it very interesting. Like I'm commenting on his Facebook comment about him being banned, and his supporters get real squirrely when you mention the Right Family Foundation.
Yeah, I'm banned from his Facebook page, so I wouldn't know because he doesn't believe in free speech.
Well, let's see how long I last, because I'm not going to put my comments up because they get pretty sweary. But yeah, he put up a Facebook post saying, "Oh, I just got suspended from Twitter. Another victory for free speech." And I jumped on and said, "Yeah, but the government hasn't thrown you in jail, have they? A private company has decided that your use of their platform breaches their rules. That's easy. Freedom of speech isn't freedom to use someone else's platform without consequences. Freedom of speech isn't freedom from consequences." And then there's a lot of big brain guys that jumped on that comment. Somebody asked me who watches the Watchers. Big fan of the Watchmen there.
We watch the Watchers. That's what we do.
Said, Sean was being a fire hose of sewage. He's an onion made of shit. I will not let that go. It's still funny. And he's doing it while being bankrolled by a fabulously wealthy family trust with zero oversight or standards. He's not a watchman. Yeah. And then the back down from that guy is amazing. He's like, "Oh yeah, I do have problems with that."
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's like, yeah, a wealthy person is bankrolling him. People aren't comfortable with that, no matter what his message is.
Right. Let's start to have a look at some of it. Now, there's not a lot really known right now, but let's just have a look what the media has been saying. Broadcaster Sean Plunkett suspended from Twitter. A post on the platform Twitter account on Monday afternoon said Plunkett had been, quote, permanently suspended, end quote, with Plunkett describing the move as another victory for free speech on his own Facebook page. Screenshots circulating online showed the suspension is apparently due to his breaking privacy rules, as well as the, quote, hateful conduct rule. Plunkett said he had no idea why he'd been suspended. Quote, "I know as much as anyone," he told Stuff. And let's just have a look at the actual, that's the post that's on the platform, where he says, the platform says, platform founding editor. I should start using that title for me, Chewy. Would we be founding editors? Yeah. Sean Plunkett permanently suspended from Twitter. At least they didn't juice him. That's pretty funny. Oh my God, the comedy is so good because he'll be stoked about it. Funnily enough, my comment pops up the top here. I don't know why it pops up so quickly, but it says, so, and I have to go hashtag Sean Plunkett because he's got no Twitter account to tag him to. So hashtag Sean Plunkett being banned on Twitter is an attack on his free speech. Yet, Sean Plunkett banning people from his Twitter and Facebook is just fine. Seems like this is a Sean problem, not a broader issue, as he's been very liberal with blocking and banning people. And as you said, Chewy, I think we'll come back full circle. I haven't set up any things to look through, but maybe we'll just come back and scroll through some of these comments at the end of the show. The story goes on. Sorry, we're just finished the story. The story goes on to say, this is what Plunkett said. It was likely prompted by complaints from what he called the, quote, anti-women brigade, end quote, who had turned out in force last week. You mean those thousands of women who turned up, along with hundreds of men? Those anti-women women. What? Who had turned out in force last week to protest planned events in Auckland and Wellington by anti-transgender activist Kelly Jean J. Keane, aka Posey Parker. Plunkett described the protest as mob rule. Now, this is something I wanted to get to, right? When Plunkett and his ilk want something through Parliament, they say majority rules. When they don't want something through, they say mob rule. Now, for a long time, and I'm consistent on this, I have said that the majority shouldn't always be the ones that get to make the decision. If they did, every minority in the world would never get anything through. And when I say minority, I'm not necessarily saying racial minority or gender minority. I'm saying any minority. Chewy, we're dog owners. we're a minority. If the majority got to decide how many dog parks there were, there'd be no dog parks.
Yeah.
Because why should they pay for it? So I've long been a proponent of majority doesn't necessarily make good legislation. Majority doesn't necessarily make good law. However, Sean Plunkett and his ilk are very much what? There was a 51% return. That means we should do it. Now, when they like it, that's what they say. When they don't, it's mob rule. Right. Here we go.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. Mob rule in ensuring cancellation of parkas, a victory for cancel culture and bullies in the trans and gay communities. It wasn't me who whipped up hysteria about Nazis giving the crowning from the anti-women brigade online, and I'm presuming they complained. However, human rights advocate, I'm not sure how to pronounce this person's name, I've been in contact with him today, Guled Mia. We invited him on tonight. He apologized, but he was busy. One of those to receive notifications of the suspension, much like you, Chewy. He had reported a tweet by Plunkett that encouraged people to read the Christchurch mosque gunman's so-called manifesto. The document was banned by Chief Censor David Shanks, and we've had David on this show talking about that. Go look through YouTube if you want to find out more information. For promoting, encouraging, and justifying acts of murder and terrorist violence against unidentified groups of people. I report, this is what Guled, I apologize for the name, I'm not sure about pronunciation, what he said. He said, I reported it as hateful content. It was inexcusable to encourage his followers to do that. He also reported it to the Department of Internal Affairs, but has yet to hear back from them. He said he understood this was just one of a number of complaints about Plunkett's Twitter use. Now, there's another story from TVNZ, which I do want to get to, which gives a couple more examples. But first, Chewy, back to you, my friend.
I actually forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, sorry, dude.
I'm sure it was important, but those thoughts. There's so many thoughts. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend I know what to say here.
I think that there's a really important point to remember, not to reiterate something I've just said, but we don't live in a society where the majority should always decide. But if you're going to be the person who plays that card, and Plunkett is that person, the referendum showed 51% didn't want cannabis reform, or I'm making up a story, but then we shouldn't have it. Then mob rule is majority decides. So if this was a mob rule coming after, it's what Plunkett claims, then that's the majority. That's what mob rule is. That's why I don't like necessarily making all decisions based on the majority decides. It's bad legislation. TVNZ says it this way, and they've got a couple of examples of some other tweets as well. Speaking to One News after his account was rendered inactive, Plunkett stated he suspected he'd been banned because of a, quote, rather ironic tweet asking if people supported the New Zealander of the Year awards. Okay, so they've got the tweet.
Not that
so
quick.
Let's show you. Well, let's see. Do you agree with Kiwi Bank's New Zealander of the Year award, says Sean Plunkett? Yes, no, or let's beat up women. I mean, like, apart from anything else, we all know that it's very difficult to get across sarcasm in the written form. But if the people saw that as well and went, what are you? Because they may not know that he was trying to be ironic, even though it is one of the lowest forms of humor. And then Chanel Lal, who obviously just won Young New Zealander of the Year, tweeted out quite soon after all the news broke, as someone who has been endlessly harassed by Sean Plunkett on Twitter, all I have to say is good riddance.
I mean, I think for the people that follow Sean and are fans of his, that is an extremely unhinged, easily weaponized fan base. If he pointed them at someone, that person's social media presence is going to be hellish. I've just had that thought. It's come back again.
Oh, there you go.
Because you can't tag Sean into anything on Twitter anymore.
Right.
What we're going to have to do is print it out and mail it to him.
I do wonder if, he kind of said, I have no idea why I've been banned. I was reminded of your comment about him being grumpy because he didn't know how to use YouTube. Maybe he should have had an idea because there was a bunch of notifications and he just doesn't actually know how to use Twitter. And so the reason he has no idea is because he's a boomer. Maybe, don't know.
I mean, if you want to talk about free speech in the marketplace of ideas, this wonderful mythical place, this is like Sean getting up on a soapbox, saying something, and everybody throwing fruit at him.
Yeah,
like, you have your audience's opinion at that point.
Hmm.
So, yeah. If
And
it's
look, I
mob
mean,
rule, that's what it is. Sometimes the
but
mob has fruit.
But let's be a little bit generous to Mr. Plunkett. Like, he's coming over to our way of thinking that maybe the majority don't always make the best decisions. I mean, little
Yeah, I'm
victories.
sure he is coming around to our way of thinking. Absolutely. That's definitely the lesson he's going to take away from this.
I do want to play one other thing from today, and it's going to make you angry.
Guy. Oh,
so the other thing that Sean Plunkett happened to Sean Plunkett today is he got banned off Twitter, and I predict he got to possibly ask the last question in the post cabinet sit down or scrum that he'll ever get a chance to ask at least, because the Prime Minister was in there today. And can I also say this? Here's one thing, right? Sean Plunkett is about 6 months behind with this trope. Yeah. The what is a woman trope. He's about 6 months behind. It does actually show not very much creativity or anything. He could have even said what is a man, like to just something new about it. But this trope that's going around, which, as we've explained dozens of times before, is very easily answered. And I have to actually say to the Prime Minister, you didn't do a very good job of this. But he did answer it. And it's quite funny. I'm going to play the clip. Sean Plunkett trolling the Prime Minister, trying to get a soundbite so he can go and fundraise some more through Mastodon, because he's got no Twitter, about what is a woman. I was unimpressed by a lot of it, but one of the things I'm least impressed with is that it's like someone doing something from the 90s. That's how it feels, like it's like someone going Nick Minute and trying to get a laugh out of it from 20 years ago. That's how it kind of feels, this question now. So let's play this. And the ironic thing is the Prime Minister did not answer this very well to start off with, but then he actually did answer the question, and Plunkett doesn't really get anything out of this, although he tries to by putting funny music behind it.
Sean. I just wanted to ask you, given comments by Keir Starmer in Britain, how do you and how does this government define a woman?
To be honest, Sean, that question's come slightly out of left field for me. Biology, sex, gender.
So every politician on the left needs to be ready for this question this year. The response is, well, it depends on the context and how you're using it. Give me the context in which you're using it, and I'll respond. But I need the context, because like I've said a dozen times before, if you say to an American, what does the word choice mean? And they go, well, picking between two or more items. No, it means good, because that's how we use it. So the response from this is either a direct response based on the ideology of that politician. I'm sure if you ask Chloe that question, she'd have it like that, because that's her position and that's what she is. But for everybody else, it's like, well, give me the context of what you're meaning from it. Do you want me to say what the dictionary definition says right now? Do you want to say how it's getting used in society by what feels like the majority of people? Do you want me to say how it's going to be used in the future? Like, context matters. So the response to that question is, give me the context in which you're using that word, because it can have multiple meanings to multiple different people, just like the word gay can have multiple meanings to multiple different people. That's actually the response. And whilst the Prime Minister fumbled and stumbled a little bit, he got there.
People define themselves. People define their own genders.
Keir Starmer has said that he...
So he's answered it, yeah? And notice that silly music in the background stop, because he's answered the question. He's answered it. Because there is a train of thought where people say, if you identify as a woman, that's what a woman is. Fine. There is some debate around that in some corners, but that's an absolutely perfectly valid way to describe what is a woman based on the context of how it's used by a huge percentage of the population. He's answered the question.
Believes 99.9% of women do not have penises. And I know it's a strange thing for him to say, but given recent events in New Zealand, I'd ask again, how do you define
He's answered
what a woman is?
He's answered it.
Well, I think as I've just indicated, I wasn't expecting that question, so it's not something that I've pre-formulated an answer.
Prime Minister should have said it, asked and answered.
In terms of gender identity, I think people define their gender identity for themselves.
There you go. Answered it twice.
Yes.
What about if you like, an official or a wider societal sense?
Again, I think we have rules in place now. If someone wants to change their gender on their birth certificate, for example, there's a process that they go through in order to do that.
This is a problem. Actually, let me just say this from a technical point of view: you don't change your gender on your birth certificate; you change your sex, and that's why that legislation is going to be problematic for this conversation, but also problematic when it comes to statistical analysis on things like the health needs for the future of the country. So the Prime Minister's made a mistake there, because you don't define your gender on a birth certificate, you define your sex. You have sex on the birth certificate, not gender. So that's why it becomes a bit more, the conversation becomes a bit more cloudy, muddy.
Yeah.
I haven't got the process chapter and verse in front of me, but it's available. Anybody can look it up and see what that process is.
One follow-up, you described that you thought some of Posey Parker's views were abhorrent. Could you tell us which ones?
And he nails us.
I think
but he nails
some
it.
of
this is supposed to be a win for Plunket.
Around the transgender community, some of the sentiment,
her views.
Yes, some of the sentiment that she's expressed towards the transgender community is abhorrent, in my view. Well, that they shouldn't exist.
Boom. That they shouldn't exist. Boom. Asked and answered, and actually, it was like, you know what they talk about when you're doing flip flops and flip flops. You know, you're doing like somersaults, and you're a bit wobbly, but you nail the landing. He nailed the landing there. It was a little bit. He got it all right. He answered it all, and he nailed the landing, because that's exactly it. That they shouldn't exist. You know, she said that trans men should be sterilized. You know, so he nailed the landing, and then but Plunkett's used that as a win, and he nailed the landing. But anyway.
He never loses. Look, in an alternative timeline, in an alternative New Zealand, this happened. Prime Minister said, "Your mum," and then cracked open a can of Diet Coke while everybody settled down.
Very good. Caitlin brings up a really good point. You could also do this. The best response is, how do you define it? Then nitpick every attempt they attempt to define it. I had we all know Planner Walk. Good friend of the show. He's around a bit. He's also a very successful YouTuber. He's just living up the road from me at the moment. He came around the other day and he borrowed a camera to do a video. You should go check it out. Go check out Planner Walk's egg video on April Fool's Day. It's hilarious. And we were talking about this, and he goes, I always just say, define a table. Yep. So what would you say if I said define a table, Chewy?
Oh, let's see. A flat surface with 3 or more legs.
Like coffee table you're talking about, like, so it's small, so it's a small thing to put your coffee. See what I mean? Like,
well, it could be large or small. I think it needs a minimum of 3 legs. Right.
So if it's a circular base, you can't have a table with a circular base and a single leg.
Oh fuck, you've got me.
Yeah, but see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's an example for a different thing of what Caitlin's saying about nitpicking. Define a table. It's not hard. I mean, it's not hang on, I'm saying not difficult, not hard. It's not that easy. So yeah, how do you use it? I mean, a table for what?
Yeah, I mean, it's just meant to be what's the term? A way of sea lioning the idea of dragging someone into this pseudo good faith question of like, I'm just asking questions on how this works, and then they just bore you to death.
Yeah,
and it's meant you're meant to give up because the goalposts keep moving, and then when you give up, they win. So I mean, it's like when people use woke. It's like, well, define woke.
Yeah,
you
normally they can't.
Okay, well, I don't want to. Okay, cool. So then I win by your rules. It's the same thing, and it's such an infinitesimal issue for most people out there. Like they'll latch on to some sort of thing like safety in bathrooms or something, which is just it's not an issue. It's not no, I won't say it's not an issue. It's not a huge issue. Like the statistics on it is infinitesimal.
Yeah, like let's put it this way, it's not mob rule.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the majority. Yeah. Like if we're all worried about the majority now, if this is the thing that we're worried about now, then it's not. So,
and then when you get into talking about define a woman, well, then you instantly devolve into a woman is defined by parts, like she's a fucking Lego.
Yeah.
you know,
And it's nonsense.
and at that point, that's gross as hell. So yeah.
And if it goes down to things like giving birth, what? So a 90-year-old female can't be a woman. They're not giving birth. If it goes to particular body parts, there are people born with abnormalities, or they're not the norm, so they can't. You know, so it's like it just gets more and more. And as I've said many times, and I don't want to offend anybody by oversimplifying it, to me, so often this is a debate around language, because that's what it comes down to. Because as soon as the definition in the dictionary changes, which it will do, then what are the Posey Parkers of this world going to have left? Because at the moment they're saying the dictionary definition, that means that's law. Well, hang on. When that changes, then what? Well, then they'll reject the dictionary definition and they'll say that's not the dictionary that they want to use. So anyway.
Dictionary's woke now anyway.
Dictionary woke. Too many words. Too many big words. I mean, more than 3 syllables. Who needs more than 3 syllables?
I was elected to read. Not to read.
We'll come back to the end of this and we'll have a look. We'll scroll through for a few minutes, a little bit of the conversations that have been going on. Chewy will have to do the Facebook because I am banned. I'll have a look at the Twitter. But I want to have a look at this situation around the retirement age as well. Now, one of the reasons we want to talk about this is what's happening internationally. And I'm sure you guys have seen and heard of all of this that's going on. I'll just put it on the background. This is happening in France at the moment. There is massive protests going on in France at the moment. And in France, one of the reasons that these massive protests are happening, well, it is the reason, is that Macron is talking about not putting it through Parliament, but actually just universally deciding that the retirement age is going to go from 62 to 64. At the moment, the retirement age in France is 62. It's a pretty good deal they've got over there. And these are the scenes of people who are saying, hell's to the no, we're not putting our retirement age up. We are leaving it at 62 and we're going to protest about it. Now, what Macron's not doing is having a broad conversation around it. The only solution or the only option he's giving is to put the retirement age up. There's nothing about, for example, lessening the amount people get, making it means, none of those, just put the retirement age up. He's also said to the protesters, he's happy to meet with the protesters as long as they don't discuss anything to do with the retirement age going up. So that's his position. Yes, we'll meet with you, but we're not going to talk about the issue as to what you're protesting about. Now, I'm sure you've seen this, Chewy. If you haven't seen this, you'll see it now. It's hilarious. Macron is so under the pump with this that he had a conversation around it the other day. And in the middle of the conversation, he removed his very expensive watch. Have you seen this?
Oh, yes, I saw that. So good. Something like an $80,000 watch.
No, that's what we're gonna beat there at. It's nowhere near $80,000. It's about a £2,000 watch. I had a look at a podcast in the weekend, and they actually delved into what exactly it was. It was about £2,000. But Macron, for some reason, thought that it would be a better look to take this. It's still an expensive watch, £2,000. It's probably 5,000 New Zealand dollars. But they're talking about austerity measures. They're talking about not having too much money, not having too much debt. And in the middle of that conversation, you'd have to watch this in the background. If you're listening to see, he's got his watch on. They've circled it right there. You'll have to come and watch the video if you're listening to it. And at the moment, see his hands and his arms. He's taking his watch off as he speaks. And then when he brings his hands back out again, look, no watch.
Do you reckon he just flung that away? Just like,
I think he put it in his pocket, or it's it's between his legs on the seat or something. And there we go. There it says right there. The watch is valued at €2,400.
It's close.
80,000. No, that was a bit of a lie that's going around. We do like to be accurate here. So there are conversations around retirement age going on around the world. In Paris or in France, this is what's actually happening. I want to bring you back to New Zealand because for a long time we've been talking about the idea of the retirement age needing to change. The current system will not work. All right, it's not even negotiable, but it's also a poison chalice for any political party because Winston Peters then makes gains about it, talking about an attack on the elderly, which it's never been. Like the brilliant thing that Winston Peters did about 10 years ago when they were talking about this is he was talking about the attack on retired people. It wasn't an attack on retired people. At the very least, it was an attack on me because they were talking about expanding the age over 20 years. So the 65-year-olds, if they're still here, would have been 85 still with their pension, wouldn't have actually impacted them at all. It would impact right now the 45-year-olds if it was going to happen over 20 years, not the 65-year-olds. This debate's been going on for a while. The current system can't stay. And Shamubeel Eaqub, he just fucking knocked it out of the park. I can't I can't
No,
say
he
too
is
much
very,
more.
very good.
So, Dee, do you want to jump in on anything that to do with it in general to start with, Chewy, before we jump into the videos? There's look, I've got like 4 of them, but they're all only like between 40 and 60 seconds. It's not going to take us ages to get through them.
Yeah, look, if anybody decides to touch the retirement age here, then we do what the French have done, is where I'm sitting. There are so many people in New Zealand that will not get to retirement age.
Yeah.
There are so many workers that are ruined by their manual work before they get to retirement age. And that's, just the idea of changing it, that's the wrong question. If we can't fund it, if it's difficult for the government to guarantee it, then find another way to fund it. Don't take it away from people.
Yep.
Like
I remember
that's where I sit.
Well, there was a debate probably 5 or 6 years ago. I don't know, maybe more than that. It was on the 7 p.m. I don't know what iteration of the home show it was in. It was a close up or if it was 7. I don't know. And the retirement commissioner and one of the points that was made was when the retirement age was raised from 60 to 65, it coincided with our life expectancy going up as well. And over that 20-year span, they'd expect the life expectancy to go from 80 to 85. So the average life expectancy wouldn't be any different. It would still be 15 years after retirement. And like I can see it, it's not a big deal. But the reality is it's a bit like the pipes, right? The 3 water situation. The current situation is untenable. The current situation can't stay. Something has to change. And like the reason I'm relating it to 3 waters, just for clarity, is for such a long time, every council has been kicking your pipes down the road, not wanting to up rates because it's a bad look for votes. At some stage, the shit's going to hit the fan. It's the same for the retirement age. So let's have a look at Shamubeel Eaqub on News Hub Nation. And he's talking a little bit about, kind of what the boomers have done to not really help this issue.
Of course. The boomers wrote a blank check to themselves against their future generations. That's what welfare is. It's superannuation is welfare for the poor who didn't save for it. And the reason why I'm a big supporter of raising the...
Did you get that? Superannuation is welfare for the poor who didn't save for it. Welfare for the poor. Superannuation should be for poor people. There's several clips that he hammers us 3 or 4 times. We'll keep going.
The retirement age or the eligibility age.
Yep.
It's the chink in the armor.
What do you mean?
We have to start having the conversation that we cannot have a universal system of welfare for old people when we have child poverty, when we have infrastructure deficits, when we have refused to invest in the social and physical infrastructure.
But isn't the problem with that, and it's a political one, is that the boomers have signed up to a social contract where they expect at age 65 to be eligible for universal superannuation.
The bugger should have saved for it.
Take that away from them.
The bugger should have paid for it. They should have saved for it. Why did they not save for it? It is an outrage. It's an outrage.
It's not about the baby boomers. We're all going to be 65 by 2030.
So as we just said, none of the boomers are going to miss out on superannuation. So they're not the conversation.
And you don't raise the age overnight.
Yeah.
No,
So
but
it's
gradually
not
over
actually
time, of
about the
course.
baby boomers.
It's not just about the baby boomers. Well, I mean,
it's not at all about the
baby
baby
boomers. Are the ones that Shamubeel was saying haven't paid for it, aren't saving for it.
Well, they're going to get it at 65.
Yeah. So what are you saying? It's about the next generation.
Yes, it is. They're the ones that will be affected by raising the age.
They're the ones who won't get it.
And they're the ones that won't get it, and they're the ones that are suffering at the moment.
Right. Clip number 1. Clip number 2. Shamubeel talks about having wealth in your older ages. So you're a bit older and you've got wealth.
Jump in because the work thing is a distraction.
Oh.
It's the wealth. The fact that we have people who have wealth in old age who are getting access to welfare payments. That's what super is. Super is welfare payments. We should not have welfare for rich people when we refuse to invest the same amount of money and the same universality for children living in poverty. Those are the trade-offs that we're making. We have a consensus across the political party that we will not raise taxes. Well, if that is the case, then we're going to have to decide where that money goes. I do not want that money going towards rich old people who did not save for it. I want it to go to young people.
What about the poor old people? Okay,
and they should absolutely get it.
They should absolutely get it. So you're suggesting that
it's welfare.
So you are suggesting a system where you raise the age for the rich people, but not for the poor people. Is that what you're saying?
We should have means testing. Yes.
Means testing.
Yes, it should not be universal for all people who refuse to save for it. We have not invested and saved for the future of this country. We knew that aging is coming. You don't need an economist to tell you that people get older. We knew this was coming.
Yeah.
Very good. Now I've got a couple more clips. Joe, anything you want to add to just yet?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So I mean, when you're talking about the older generations, like they got through on free university. So, you know, they didn't have to pay for that. There was no student loans.
Yep.
Houses were cheaper. All of this stuff. They all got the benefits, and then they start making the smart financial decisions that we can't afford this, and then they take stuff away from the previous generations.
Yeah.
I've always been of the mind, like, I'm a fan of the universal basic income, and New Zealand Super is probably about as close as we've ever had to a UBI in this country. I've always looked at it as it sort of seems to be a pattern of how you could roll this out. But then he's right, you know. We've had, like, that generation enforced means testing on a whole bunch of welfare programs. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Yeah.
It doesn't sit right when I think of someone like Winston Peters. He gets a super payment. He gets a similar super payment to my mother, you know, and they're very different people.
Let's also get rid of this bullshit argument about I'm entitled to it. I've worked all my whole life. I've paid tax my whole life. So I'm entitled
that's
to it.
a common one.
I used to, you know, this would be a topic of conversation that as a 30-year-old I'd be doing on talkback radio to a bunch of 70-year-olds. And my response then was, well, there are lots of people who hit retirement age who haven't worked their whole lives. There are people who have been on benefits their whole lives and then they get it. But equally, you know, I've been on the dole and I've also worked for it. How come you boomers think that dole people aren't entitled to it or are bludgers, whereas I've worked and put taxes into the system as well? And then when I worked for a business that closed down or went bankrupt, I took money out again when I was on the dole. So, you know, it's like there's no more entitlement to a pension, in my opinion, than there is to a working for families or a you know, being on the dole, whatever that's called now, or any of those sorts of things, or a single parent benefit, because we all put in at times and we all take out at times. And if you've worked your whole life and you haven't taken any out, you take out when you're retired. Cool. If you've worked half your life, but for half of it you've had to take out based on being unemployed for whatever reason, then cool. You know, it's just sort of how it works. And if you've never worked because you couldn't for whatever reason, and then you get a pension, well, I guess that's what Shamubeel is talking about when it comes to, you know, it's for the poor. It's for the people who need it most, Chewy.
That's a really good point. Like, we shouldn't everything that we look at for this, look at the gold standard of what is the bare minimum of living, right? Is you should be able to get a house, you should be able to feed yourself, you should be able to access healthcare. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's the gold standard. Everybody can do that. There's a lot of people in the chat going, means test it. And yes, that seems to be the fit, right? If you've got, you know, $1 million in the bank, maybe you don't need a government payout. You know, maybe you don't need rent payments or something like that. But then when that money runs out, could someone then hide
that's the thing.
their savings?
I think maybe, yeah. And the other thing is people with accountants will figure ways around it, but that's fine. That doesn't mean you don't do it. The other thing is that, you know, you hear stories all the time about retired people or pensioners or people who are in their 70s or 80s having an investment, having money in the bank, you know, and then they get sick or they have a stroke and they need they need to be looked after for a year at $600 a day. So it's not quite as black and white as just means test it. What it probably is we need to revisit the whole system and figure the whole system out.
Yeah.
Like, so maybe, right? Maybe government takes over, you know, if people need long-term hospital care, government takes over the cost from that, but they means test the pension. So therefore, if you do have $1 million in the bank and there's, well, let's be honest, $5 million in the bank, and probably this day and age, and you're needing to live off it, then they can't also expect you to pay for all your healthcare. Or if you have nothing, then, you know, it's, I don't know, I'm more, I don't think it's just as simple as let's just means test. I think there's other parts of that equation that would need to be sorted out as well.
There are definitely downsides to means testing. You know, Peter in the comments says, you know, significant bureaucracy, which would eat into the running of some sort of super fund. That is definitely a thing. A couple of other things that I would think would enormously help with this situation as well. I forget who brought it up, but years ago, and it stuck with me, is the idea of a fixed retirement age here in New Zealand at 65 at the moment. National have made noises about bringing that up to 67, which is crazy. That doesn't work for everybody. That doesn't, like, when you look at expected lifespans, like so many Māori are not going to get there because of the significant disparity in healthcare and
Your life expectancy.
lifespan that we have, life expectancy we have. Some people have jobs where they're not capable of working to 65 or 67. Where is the option for people to make a choice to start their retirement early and maybe get less upfront and try and spread it out a little bit earlier?
Yeah.
Some people are just knackered.
Maybe
And I
that's
think the other thing that should be looked at, and I've said this with my tongue half in my cheek before, we know that the old age pension homes are an absolute scummy industry. Nationalize them. You know? Like, people should be looked after in their old age. That's the line.
So
Like,
how about
I don't care how we get there.
Here's an
but
idea.
they have to be looked after.
Here's an idea. Okay. It's about $500 a week, give or take, for a single person on the pension. So therefore, 500 times 52 is $26,000 a year. Now, from 65 to 80 is 15 years. So times that by 15, that's $390,000. What about if the government just put in a virtual account $390,000 for every citizen of New Zealand, and said, you can take that whenever you want. If you want to take that at $500 a week when you turn 65, cool. If you want to take that at 21 and use it to buy a house, just know that when you're 65, there's nothing to be had. What about something like that? That seems, and then if you're Māori, because the problem, right, with thinking about how we would pay Māori sooner than the rest because of their life expectancy is who's Māori. Like that becomes quite problematic, statistically speaking, at least anyway. I don't have a problem with the concept of it, but what does that mean? If 8%, 16%, half Māori, what does it mean? And how do you then divvy that up? Talk about bureaucracy. But if the government just went, every New Zealander is entitled to $390,000, you can take it anytime you want between 18 and 65. If you don't take it at all during the year, then at 65, it kicks in.
Oh, I don't know.
Don't know? Too tempting?
I don't know. No, I know that there's people out there that have terrible decision-making processes.
Sure, that's true.
There are significant downsides to basically anything that we're going to come up with, and it's such a huge thing. And I think that's why it always gets kicked down the can, down the line. And the only time we ever hear something is we're just going to put the age up.
Right.
It's
Here we
never
go.
like we're going to, and okay, this leads into something cool.
Does beautifully, because they asked Shamubeel Eaqub what should be, what should they do? So this is exactly what we're talking about. This is what he had to say. What should they do?
Means testing.
Yep.
Raise the age over time, gradually over a period of 10 years, and close the gap between super and welfare.
What are you going to raise the age to?
70.
70.
Just do it over 20 years. We're living forever. But the problem is our welfare payments and super payments are so different. Unless we close the gap, the groups that you're talking about will continue to miss out. Most of those people will not live to that old age. So it's not fair that people who cannot work because their bodies have worn out can't enjoy the same benefits of retirement as other people who are healthy.
We've got to fix the welfare system before we talk about raising
it is
age
both.
at
It is
all.
both.
There's one other.
And the very last clip, he really nails down the point he's been trying to talk about, and he talks about the cycle. I don't know what it means. I've written in my notes the cycle. I can't remember what it means. Let's just listen to what Eaqub, Shamubeel Eaqub has to talk about. This is the last one we're going to play from. I can't remember why I said the cycle, but it says in my notes the cycle, and then there's another word that I can't read because my handwriting is that bad. But I'm sure this is great.
We want people to be poor before we will help them, right?
Right.
We make them poor, and then we blame them for being poor, and then we say, well, isn't it sad that you're poor?
Well, we just did a story with Thomas Mormosea, who is the working poor at the moment,
Totally.
okay? And, I mean, he's likely to lose his job. He's the working poor, but there's the retired poor that you're talking about as well.
Yes, and that's increasing
And that's increasing.
because of the housing situation largely.
But this is why we cannot afford to keep subsidizing rich people who don't need it. We need to make it much more generous for people who actually need it and actually give them some dignity in old age. Because fundamentally, our purpose of welfare is to give people dignity. We're not doing that. Our welfare system actually does not give people dignity when they're on it.
We're just going
There you go. Pretty good, yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I agree with everything, but I see where he's going.
The idea of the cycle, that's why I said the cycle. We make people poor, and then we chastise them for being poor.
Yep.
And then we help them for being poor. That's a pretty interesting observation by Shamubeel, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm definitely with them on that point. Like, let's, you know, like I said, there's a baseline. Don't let people go below the baseline. In my job, I deal with quite a few elderly, and some of their situations are really rough to think about.
Yeah.
And I just go, how did this happen? How did we let this happen? How have we failed this person in some cases over the span of decades?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the thought that follows that is, what if it was me? What if that is me in 30, 40 years?
There, but for the grace of God.
It terrifies me to think about that. And I hate the decision-making process that goes around this.
Yeah.
Because would you have any faith that we're going to come up with a good solution, or are we going to come up with a horrifically compromised, bastardized version that is going to get corrupted and taken advantage of? And, you know, like, if people say means testing, people are just going to put their shit in trusts. And then we've got the IRD trying to chase that and close loopholes and that sort of thing. You know, like I'm in my early 40s now, and like our financial advisor is talking about, you know, well, you got to get cracking on saving for your retirement, because you're going to need like $1.5 million each. And I've never had that much money in my life. And, you know, like I'm lucky. I've got a job, like I've got a retail job. I'm not slinging bricks or doing heavy manual labor. I guess if someone does want to come to a 70-year-old for some help with, I assume, Android 112 that runs on a screen in front of your face floating in midair, sure, I'll probably know how to install Flappy Bird on it. But, you know, like, how hard is it to predict what world we're going to be looking at 30 years time?
Yeah.
But part of me wants to go, if we can't fund super, then somebody needs to be paying more. And I'm looking at wealth tax, I'm looking at companies tax, and that sort of thing. Like, that economist, he had a term of taxes love, and I agree with that. Like, he bandied that around quite a bit, is that we're too scared of the word tax because it is, you know, it's election poison. No one wants to talk about it.
Let's just now cross over to the next part of this conversation. This is kind of in three parts. We looked at France, we looked at some suggestions from New Zealand, and then this morning on the AM show, Chloe Swarbrick decided to drop a bit of truth. Now,
put some respect on her name. That's Queen Chloe.
Okay, Queen Chloe. Okay.
Thank you.
That we talked earlier about the idea that, I don't know wherever your mayor is at the moment, but most of them were saying, you know, no one's going to take our three waters. What they didn't therefore add to the side of it is, and by the way, your rates are going to go up. Like most places, the status quo isn't going to work. Retirement age, the status quo isn't going to work. So Chloe just basically explains, Queen Chloe explains why we need to be aware of the bullshit that comes out of government and parliament in general.
In particular, and I guess that this is where it really boils down to, the public need to understand that politicians are lying when they promise that they can have it both ways. We cannot simultaneously say that we are going to have a better outcome, both for landlords and for tenants, both for employers and for employees. We need to
both for retirement age and tax take. You know, put your own one in there. Both for keeping your water infrastructure and your rate bills. Politicians are lying to you.
Choose a side at the end of the day, because all politicians are fundamentally...
landlords and tenants have a symbiotic relationship. You know, they actually rely on each other. So when you put an additional tax on landlords, yes, that ends up costing renters more. So our view is actually you can have it both ways sometimes. If you reduce government waste, if you make policy that removes red tape and regulation that just holds everybody back, then yes, everything can be.
To challenge that, though, I mean...
we need politicians to stop dividing people and saying it's one or the other.
Hang on. So I want to highlight that point that David Seymour just made. We need politicians to stop dividing people. That was David Seymour that said that. We need politicians. Shall I play it again? This is David Seymour saying this.
Tape and regulation that just holds everybody back. Then yes, everything can
To
get
challenge that though, I mean,
we need politicians to stop dividing people and saying it's one or the other.
I just think
that was David Seymour saying no longer are we going to say it's one or the other. David Seymour saying that, and we need to stop dividing people.
It's about honesty. And I think, again, if we're to go to that point that David's raising about costs and pass-through and other ways, again, most economists would tell you that simply when you're talking about the rental market, those pass-through costs simply don't bear out. What we're talking about with rents is the maximum of what the market will bear. What we've had for the past 10 years prior to the OCR increases, the most fertile economic circumstances for landlords in kind of recent history. We've continued to see economic rates.
But
there we go. Yeah, do you want to? I've got something to play for you, Chewy, that's going to make you mad because it portrays David Seymour as quite likable. No, it's going to make you mad because it portrays him as quite likable.
I'm always angry. I just want to bring up the point because we're talking about landlords, right?
Yep.
So my dad's had to get set up in a new flat, and he has had to go to Wins to get an accommodation supplement and that sort of thing. He's of retirement age. He's retired. He's not wealthy at all. He is retired poor, and the rent in the place that he's at, there is no possible way that he could afford that. So he's getting quite a big accommodation supplement, which is going not to him, it is going directly into his landlord bank account.
Yeah.
Now, if you talk about making me angry, that makes me fucking furious. Like, the rental market, like the landlords know that if they get someone like that, they can just ask for whatever they want. The government will give it to them. Like, the market is so fucked. And again, what is his other choices? He has none.
I wonder if again, maybe we need to look at the full thing. I wonder if landlords, I'm not trying to say this to kind of have the back of the landlords entirely, but I wonder if landlords could, rather than them charging their tenant more, could maybe get a tax break. I mean, it's the same money being spent by the government if it's a tax break rather than giving them to pay them more, but then it's not more money that the beneficiary has to have. It's already going directly to, like, if there's another way to skin that cash. Same amount of money. Same amount of money, but just done in a slightly different way. So therefore the beneficiary doesn't have to worry about the $600 a week. It's actually just $350 or $400 or whatever, and they're getting
They were providing accommodation for the public good. But again, is that the role of a private landlord?
Yeah.
You know, like the wait list for say like little pensioners flats, which for some reason seems to be the area of responsibility of local councils in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's weird.
They can't afford the uptake. Like the councils have been trying to modernize these pensioner flats to the healthy home standard, and they can't afford it because the rates have to stay low enough that they don't get lynched in the octagon. You know, so they get voted in again. This is what we've talked about. So why is local government looking after that? Why is that something go, well, I don't want my rates going towards playgrounds and pensioners' flats. I want them going to parking.
Yeah, very much. Hey, let me play you this super quick, and this will make you grumpy. I was just actually, I'm interested that David Seymour can come across from time to time as almost likable. He makes a joke here, which is okay. No, have a look. You tell me what you think. You're the comedian. That's what I thought I'd check in with you.
Oh, no. There is something to be said, Ryan, about how we operate in an MMP environment, yet every election continues to be presented in a presidential style where we have this kind of 1v1 individualized, celebritized leader of the opposition, prime minister.
Well,
that's not how our elections work.
No, and I think this year that's all going to change because they are slightly less inspiring than perhaps leaders of past.
They don't even have different names.
Exactly. So
there is that.
I think we'll have...
Oh, Chewy, you go forward.
He made me move my face. God
you
damn
go forward a little bit. No, but look, the point about that to do with what Chloe was saying is, and I've said it for a long time, we typically vote for the leader. And you vote for Jacinda or you vote for Key. Or
and
we've
spoken about that. That's wrong. There's so many people and the news media and the people, the reporters that commentate on politics and that sort of thing, they miss this trick every fucking time. that they still do not refer to our political process in an MMP way. There are so many people out there that think they vote blue or red, and those are your only options.
Yeah.
Like I saw someone in a local Facebook group, there's the debate going on at the moment about the scale backs for the Dunedin Hospital.
Yep.
And this guy was going, well, if the government isn't listening to us for what we want for our hospital, then you should vote national. And I'm saying that as not a national voter. And I'm like, no, that's not your only option. You don't reward the party that never wanted to build us a new hospital in the first place with a reward because you're not quite happy with the party that is building us a hospital, just not exactly what we want. Doesn't work like that.
So that's the thing. And I've gone on this for 20 or 30 years talking about politics. Well, not 30, 20, 15, 8, 3.
Final offer.
You kind of get that feeling from a lot of people when they say it's time for a change. Oh, I just feel like it's time for a change. And I always say to them, that's an interesting point. But do you realize better the devil you know is exactly the same point on the other side of that coin? Time for a change is no more a slogan to vote on than better the devil you know. Because it's actually, they hold the same amount of weight. And like what I hear you saying a little bit there, Chewy, is, Labor's not doing what they want them to do, so let's vote the other guys in because it's time for a change. No, actually, the same amount of like credibility can be given to better the devil you know as well, and put pressure on them. Now, one of the ways you put pressure on them, perhaps, is to put a big Green party in and make it so that they can govern with the Greens, and it'll help. Now, I want to wrap up with Chloe's conversation with one thing, Chewy, because she has this idea how the media should operate. It's a crazy old idea. And, I think I've probably approached Chloe's office maybe 3 to 5 times to come on and have a chat with us. And
look, I haven't even heard it, and I agree with her.
Never quite got her yet. But she's got a really interesting idea about how the media should have longer conversations and, not just squeeze commentary between 2 ad breaks. Let's just have a listen to this insightful view of Chloe Swarbrick. I just only hope there's a group out there that can maybe start doing this one day.
I think that there is a really fair frustration out there in the public, but it's also definitely one that we as the Greens feel in our parliament, that we have a soundbite media environment that has a very fast metabolism that's constantly chasing the story of the day, and that we're not really afforded the oxygen to talk about the really big issues of our time. Ryan, 2 weeks ago, the International Panel on Climate Change released a synthesized report from the top 200 scientists in the world on climate, and it said we have 7 years to get our actions in line to keep global heating below 1.5 degrees, which is necessary for a livable climate for future generations.
Now, Stuart Nash. No, I'm kidding. No, we did. We spent about 3 interviews of our show that day doing, covering that. But I think it's a fair point that you both make.
It'd be really
we don't give you enough time.
It'd be really, really good to talk about evidence-based policy and to discuss the pros and cons of that, to discuss business cases.
Only.
And
okay, here's what we'll do. When are you guys next on?
If only there was some kind of media outlet where we could just give time and
like a long-form interview series.
Space. I don't know. To not have to worry about the ad breaks or the sponsors or just space for chatting for 5 to 45 minutes just on whatever you want. If only there was. I mean, maybe someone should do something like that, Joey.
Look, I made a joke that's too good to just leave in the chat. Okay.
Okay, tell us.
Seymour talked about symbiosis. And I think that's really rich, talking about a symbiotic relationship coming from a parasite in a suit.
That's a very good joke. Are you putting that down for your next stand-up?
It's pretty good.
If
I do too many of those jokes, I'm just screaming at an audience. It's not good.
Listen, I used to listen quite a lot to Ricky Gervais, Carl Pilkington, and Stephen Merchant. And you could hear on their XFM show, which are all online right now, you can go and listen to them, that often you'll hear stuff on stage by Stephen Merchant and Ricky Gervais that absolutely come from their radio show. You can hear in the radio show that they're bouncing things around and ideas have sparked and they've traveled onto stage. Alrighty, team, let's say a huge thanks to our patrons. Love you. Thanks for being on board. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There's JK. And look, we've got a space here for someone right here. Your name could be there. It could be right there. Your name could be right there.
David. David in the chat calling us out. Whoops, not that one. We've been ignoring the chat all night, apparently.
Have we? That's because we're taking Plunkett's line of abandoning free speech.
I will rip through for David's benefit right now all the chat that I have starred. Maybe
Well,
not all of them.
Let's do it in a sec. I want to say again, we're acknowledging Carl. Carl B joined up to be a patron over the weekend. We appreciate you. Yep, we'd love to have you on board if you want to come and join us. If you don't, then you're all right. But if you do, well, then we love you. That's pretty cool. And just go to patreon.com/Big Hairy News, and that's how you do it. Thank you for being involved. Yes, I've got one other thing to share. It's not to do with anything to do with news though. So good. Let's get into the chat, shall we?
Okay, so
or should we not? Should we just annoy people who are?
Well, a couple of them are David's, and he's
Okay.
made me salty there. Gareth H says might have to rewatch your interview with him. That's Sean. Still amazed that we managed to get that. Absolutely, go look. We've got that famous clip of him trying to define woke and absolutely buggering it up.
Should I spoil it? I'll spoil it. He thinks woke is anyone who disagrees with him. So therefore, Elon Musk is woke.
Perfect. First of David's comments that are started. Current retirement superannuation scheme and even universal basic income scheme will work if higher earner taxes were back at the rate that it was in pre-1984. So again, you can look at the sins of the past for why we can't have the nice things now. They decide to pull up the ladder behind them. Bradley says, again, this is about super, just means test it. Peter does point out means testing means significant bureaucracy. Kim, old age homes are horrendous. Quality of care and profit are like oil and water. That goes for hospitals, and privatizing anything is just a disaster. Nationalize it all. They have driven up residential house prices and rents beyond any realistic market. And that's it. We're not looking at a fair market. If people can't afford fair priced basic housing, shit's wrong. Plan R says decommodify houses. Absolutely.
Nice.
New Zealand has a habit of saving for retirement by buying as many houses as they can. And we don't invest in things. We invest in selling old houses to each other.
Yeah.
It's not. We're not an economy of making things or inventing things. And yeah, there's got to be ways to close that. That all started happening in the 90s, by the way.
Yeah.
David again. See, I do pay attention to the chat. The accommodation allowance makes landlords the biggest bludgers in New Zealand. Absolutely. Free Soul points out that a rent to own program would be of enormous benefit, and I would agree with that.
I wrote a piece yonks ago, like 15 years ago, about what we should do for retirement, how we should get people, and all things to do with stopping crime rate and stuff. And one of the things that we need to do is build wealth. And one of the ways we can build wealth is that exact idea. People who are currently state housing residents could be house owners by having their rent go towards the purchasing of the property, and that's how you build wealth. It's one of the ways you build wealth in this country is to own a house that you have as an asset.
And again, it's a societal benefit to all of us to have people that are educated, healthy, and homed. That's it. I don't care about the cost as long as that's the end game. I don't care about someone going, well, I bought my house with my own money. Cool. Good for you. But you know what else you get out of this deal? You don't get harassed by beggars when you go and get a coffee. Because people are happy, healthy, educated, and homed. That's what we need to do. Let's all agree on that.
All right. Can I do my little plug now?
You may.
Tomorrow morning, you want to tune into the latest episode of Let's Talk Funny? David Correas.
One of my favorite comedians.
You saw him at the festival?
So good.
Tell me about him.
I may have been quoted as saying that David Correas is New Zealand's favorite Filipino gremlin. He is amazing. He's just the nicest person too.
So if you're watching us on YouTube, then this will be uploaded tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. New Zealand time. If you're not, then a really good way you can do it is head off to Apple Podcasts and subscribe to Let's Talk Funny. and that helps us in the charts. It's like liking it as well, and that will be up at 5 a.m. tomorrow morning for you to have a listen to it. And if you're not sure who David Croyas is, here he is on
my favorite clip. It's so
here
good.
he is on the spelling bee, getting ready to start the spell. We should start our show with this every single time.
Wow, let's go.
So there you go. David Croyas is going to be,
and
the,
that is his energy all of the time.
Now, if you are someone who is, and Chewy, you're one, and others out there who work in the field of comedy or introduce comedy, the interesting thing with David is, I spoke to him just before we live streamed the Posey Parker demonstration, so it was quite limited in time. We ended up doing a full hour, but because of that, we were quite sort of let's go, and it ends up being a really interesting chat. And I've titled it a masterclass in stand-up comedy because he really does delve into what he does, why he does it. And that series, Let's Talk Funny, that series is really about talking to comedians about their art, talking to them about why they do comedy. And so, yep, that's out tomorrow morning. David Croyas, episode 9, Let's Talk Funny. And I just thought I'd let you all know about it. So that's my little free plug. Have you got anything to do? You got like a washing machine you're selling at the moment or something? Something you want to put out there?
Not at this stage, no, Pat. But I will let you know when I have any secondhand whiteware to clear.
Yes. Good. All right, lovely people. It's been a great show tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Karen Plunkett, if you're watching, which I'm sure you are.
It's not on Twitter.
Can't watch us on Twitter. Oh, yeah, you won't be able to watch us on Twitter. We were going to do some other things. Shall we just give that 30 seconds? It is time to go. Have a look at some of the comments. We haven't done that. We haven't jumped back to it. I don't want to go for another 10 hours. Let's just have a look at some of the comments super quick. Or should we do that tomorrow night? It should be like an addendum. So here's one. Kenny says, so you're saying he's been deplatformed. Yeah, there is. What's the reason? Bans with no reason given are not on. Elon Musk, what's going on? This is one of the only news sources not in New Zealand government's pocket.
Oh, he's tagged Elon in it as well. Oh my God.
I know. Here we go. Good. His voice adds nothing to the positive to the world. Keeps on going. It goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. The other thing is he is not actually off Twitter because I'm sure he's got that app on his phone, so he'll still be able to do what he wants to do. Anyway, it's been a good show. Thanks, team. We appreciate you being on. This week, we are here 3 nights. Next week, it'll be a short week because Easter over the weekend. So we're not normally. One other thing. Remember the naked pastor, the guy whose cartoons I've been showing, especially around the Posey Parker situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to him tomorrow morning, and he will play out on Friday night, which is quite appropriate. Naked pastor on Easter Friday. So that's a conversation that'll be happening this week as well. And also Monday night. It's a long way away, but we won't be here because it's a public holiday. So appreciate you guys. Appreciate you being on board. We'll be back tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Anything else you want to add in there before we go? You're highlighting any other things?
No, that's all good.
All the best, team.
What tomorrow brings.
Wednesday it brings Donald Trump being charged or being arrested. So that'll be another laughy night, perhaps, shall we? Perhaps.
Yep.
All right, guys. Thank you for being with us. All the best, and we will catch you when we catch you. Hooroo.